Okay, Simon Dixon here, CEO and co-founder of BnkToTheFuture.com, and today we're doing a special update with Shawn Wilkinson, who is the CEO and co-founder of Storj. Shawn, do you want to say hello?
Hello, guys and girls. How are you guys doing?
So it's been great following your progress, and what I wanted to do is go through a few topics related to the progress that's been made since you did, we contributed in the seed funding round, and what's been happening with Storj since. So I think just for those I mean, most would have heard of Storj, but just for those that haven't, could you just give a real brief overview of the project and what you're up to?
Sure. So Storj is all about distributed and decentralized cloud storage. We think the internet is a distributed and decentralized network, that no one controls. But if you look at cloud storage today, it's mostly contained in Amazon and Google and, these large monolith companies that really store most of the data online. And so a lot of problems stem from that, privacy, security, performance, price, all things that impact us. And we thought, this doesn't make sense. The storage on the internet should be decentralized and distributed, and ends up solving a lot of problems. So we set out to solve that problem. And the real missing piece that we saw was Bitcoin and blockchain technology to make that possible. So we embarked on that journey in 2014 as a project, open source project. And then in 2015, we founded a company to help address that. We had the technology, it was great and dandy, but at the end of the day, it needs to be easy for people to use. And we need to sit down and get it in people's hands. And the only way to do that, we thought, is building products around it and supporting people. And so we felt, building out a company around that open source technology was the best way to go. So,
okay. So one of the things that stand out to me about Storj is that you're actually taking an existing application, an existing technology that everybody's actually already using, whether that be Dropbox or Google Drive or iCloud or Amazon S3 or any of the providers that people are using, and you're trying to actually get an actual benefit, whether that's privacy or more security or being able to actually provide storage at a cheaper rate. And you're using the blockchain as a mechanism for that. Now, one of the problems I see, because we see a lot of business plans and a lot of the blockchain companies, and one of the most frequent questions that I try and ask people is, why do you actually need a blockchain to do that? Can't existing technology do that? And is blockchain, a horrible, clunky solution that introduces new risks, like having to secure your own private keys, and new risks at the expense of some of the benefits that you might be getting? So could you explain how you think a blockchain based approach actually improves upon some of the storage solutions that everybody's using today?
Yeah. So the technology for distributed data, is known. We all know of things like BitTorrent, right? I can go on there, I can download the latest content, and it's really, really, really fast and performant. But that's only for the popular content, right? That's only for the content that everyone wants. So we know how to do that technology. What's the missing piece there is the incentivization. How do I get lots of people to go seed or store, this porn picture of my cat or dog? Like, no one cares about that content. And so we see as, Bitcoin and blockchain as that missing piece to say, hey, I don't have, another part of a movie or something like this to share with you, but I can give you some incentivization, some reward for storing and transmitting my data for me. So again, the technology has been known for, distributing this data and doing it scalably, doing it privately, doing it securely. but the missing piece has always been that incentivization component. Why do I do that? And that wasn't solved until Bitcoin and blockchain came along and showed us how to do it.
Okay, so for those that, I'm sure we've got some very technical people on this, but for those that are less technical, could you just describe like the different solutions between, say, a Dropbox and storing everything on a centralized server and how they actually do that versus, Tor, where it's kind of a peer-to-peer network, and then the third ground, which is blockchain, and kind of how that differs without going too deep into the technology, just so people can understand the difference between how people are actually storing files at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess I can kind of start at the Dropbox level. So, when we started out in 2014, we were thinking that, hey, we want to make, a private and encrypted Dropbox kind of application, and this is going to be the future. Everyone's data is going to be safe from spying and snooping. It's going to be great. But when you actually start to investigate applications like Dropbox, for years and years and years, they never stored a single shred of user data. What they did, Dropbox is just a front-end application that we look at, and those files for many, many years just went to Amazon S3. And what Amazon S3 does is just a giant data center maintained by Amazon worldwide that, again, just stores that data. And so we found that pretty interesting that, we see on the front end, Dropbox is this great application that does all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just a front end for the real people who are actually storing the data. If you look at Dropbox, financials and what we can tell about it, it's not that great. But if you look at Amazon S3, they posted like $1 billion surprise profit last year. So that's where our data is actually being stored is in these providers like that. And so you have, providers like Dropbox, which again is just a front-end application, and the data is just dumped on some server somewhere. You have other services like Tor, you talked about, which doesn't necessarily store the data, but is really focused on privacy. I think those are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Dropbox has been hacked, all that data has been compromised. In the past, versus Tor is kind of the opposite ideal, where you can view websites and content, and only you can view that content, and no one can eavesdrop on that like you can on these more centralized services. So we really came in with a vision saying, how can we get the security of something like Tor, which is super secure and super robust, but the ease of use of Dropbox. That's what we want. We want that Dropbox simplicity, but we want the security of something like Tor that was actually developed by the U.S. Navy and by the government, because they wanted to have State Department employees and whatnot be able to connect to the web in crazy parts where the internet's really not so safe. And we put that out there, and a lot of people took that up and saying, hey, this is useful for me as well. I might live in some oppressive regime. I want to just be able to browse Facebook. And so it's really taking this super powerful technology, which is kind of difficult to use, and combining with this really easy to use technology that is very easy to use, and seeing where that middle ground is. And where we came out with is we want to build a platform that allows people to have their data stored securely, privately, encrypted at a great performance. But we want to provide that to the application developers. We wanted to provide it to the people who build the tools for people to make it easy. So the idea is that you can use a Dropbox-like application. You can store your files securely, but you don't have to worry or think about the platform underneath. You don't have to worry about that technology. You have to think about Bitcoin or blockchain technology. It just works. And so that's where we came out, is that middle ground of, we want to focus on building a platform, helping application developers build these secure and really great applications that at the end of the day, you and me just download an application, it works, we're happy, we don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
But trying to bring those two halves together.
Yeah, which is, it seems like the impossible task that will be the killer app at the moment, and that's why we're interested in this one. So you mentioned that the difference being the incentivization structure. So many will be familiar with Bitcoin, but for those that many of our investors that just use Bitcoin but may not be too familiar with how it works, one of the main innovations was that Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto came up with this proof of work concept where people could prove that they were contributing computer power to the network, and in exchange they were given this newly created Bitcoin, and that was linked into their monetary policy and how the new Bitcoins entered out to the economy. So you could prove you were working on solving those problems and actually verifying the transactions in the network. So taking that, could you take that analogy out to what you're actually doing with Storj and how this incentivization structure works, and how that then ties into where the files that we would upload to the Storj network are actually being stored?
Yeah. So for the Storj network, we talked about this idea that you can build this peer-to-peer network. We already know how to transfer data and files around the web and do it at scale. It's this extra question of how do you get people to do that? How do you incentivize them to do that? And that solution is kind of Bitcoin and blockchain. So the way we kind of see it is that when maybe I'll step through the process of how uploading a file to the Storj network works on a protocol level. So what you would do is you, Simon, have a super secure, important file, or maybe some investment docs or whatnot that you want to store securely, and you don't want to put it on your general centralized cloud storage provider, and we could just get hacked anyways. And so you want to upload it to something like Storj. So what's going to happen? You're going to use an application that supports it, or a tool set, and those files, those documents, are going to be broken up into small pieces. All right. And then those pieces are going to be encrypted with only keys that you know and have access to. So not me, not Storj Labs, not any other third-party provider. You just have access to those keys. Then the software determines, okay, where's best to place these pieces on the network. If you're just backing up those applications, maybe there'll be slower nodes, or maybe if you want to share them with some other people on your platform, you need some fast nodes. So those pieces of data will go directly to one of these nodes on our network, and a contract will be establishing the length and the terms and the amount of payment for that amount of storage that they are providing. Now you're going to transmit it to them. And before you transmit it to them, you're actually going to generate something called an audit. You're going to generate lots of these little audits. What it allows you to do is remotely verify that they still have that file and haven't modified it at all. So it's kind of similar to proof of work. It's kind of this proof of resource, a proof of file that allows you to very quickly determine that file is there without really having to touch it. And so that file is going to be transmitted, and then over time you are going to issue these audits. You're going to check periodically, say, every couple of days, you'll say, are you there? Do you still have my file? Prove it. And when that person proves it, then you can provide them with a small payment for that time period that they held that file. So it's this idea that we're going to a space where we're going to be using systems like micropayments to do this at scale. Is that these users are proving cryptographically that you have their file, and you are paying them on that when they provide that proof. And so you can kind of think of it as, you know, a mini mining or mini proof of work, where you're not doing it to a whole gigantic network, right? Like you do in Bitcoin. It's just you and that other entity on, you know, the other side of the internet that's doing or holding that file for you. So it's just between you and them. No one really has to be involved. No one really cares about you know, those documents that you stored. Only you care about them. And so you and that other person, the only people, have to be involved in that transaction. So that's a little bit how the flow works, kind of on a technical level for payments.
So if I was trying to draw that into an analogy that a non-technical person could try to understand, let's say we have an important investment agreement. Rather than putting that on Amazon servers, which, you know, many people are using as one of the most secure servers, but still you're relying upon Amazon not getting hacked for that. And you're putting all the control in someone else's, which, you know, is probably a better solution than most people trying to store it themselves. But you still have to rely on Amazon's do that. But what this would do is we take that investment document and we kind of shred it up into, let's say, 10 pieces. Those 10 pieces would be put in some kind of locker that you only hold the key to. And these computers, as it were, that are contributing to the network, each get a piece of, you know, each get to store that locker with a shred of your data in. And you hold a master key that unlocks all 10 at the same time, so you can actually access that document whenever you need it. And then every now and then you can periodically go out to all the people that are storing that. You don't know who they are, but and check the document, this piece of shredded document is still there, and they are incentivized to prove that it's still there because they get some kind of reward similar to how it works in Bitcoin, where when you verify a transaction, you get a reward called newly created Bitcoins. In this case, you get a reward, and is that all done with a token, the token that you created called Storj X coin? Is that how the rewards are paid?
Yeah, so I can get into Storj coin, but I wanted to make one very important point, and I think this differentiates us from a lot of the other Bitcoin startups out there and a lot of people working on the technology, is what that looks like to you, Simon, when you upload that document. All you're doing is going on to some interface on your platform or your website and hitting an upload button and putting in maybe the encryption key. And when you want it back, you're hitting the download button and hitting the entering in the decryption key. You have to worry about none of those steps.
And what does a decryption encryption key look like? Is it like a row of letters and numbers like a Bitcoin address, or is it 25 words? Or
the application or the implementation that you're using. So this could, again, function, you know, very similar to something like you know, Dropbox or, you know, any other thing. The thing is that we just listed the technical steps on how that would work, but on what you would actually experience would be no different than any other application. And that's the real power, the power of the abstraction, the power of, you don't have to go through a bunch of extra steps to use or understand this technology. And that's why we really think, you know, this will be really powerful in getting to not only Bitcoin users that understand, you know, the privacy and the security and they want that, but the average everyday user that says, you know, they're using an application, the developer side to switch out that backend for storage, and they don't notice. All they know is it seems a little faster and it's a lot more secure, and they have no idea that the files are not going to Amazon S3 anymore. They're going to storage.
Well, that's quite interesting to the real world, because you know, if just an average person right now goes to Amazon S3 and signs up and tries to put data on Amazon S3, they're going to be going through some processes that very unfamiliar with right now. It won't look like Dropbox. It required Dropbox to put, username sign in on the front, and years and lots of money to develop a really nice interface that integrates with all your applications. But only the Dropbox developers need to deal with Amazon S3 when they were doing that.
Absolutely.
So it's the same analogy now. Even if you have some kind of unfamiliar encryption layer and private key or something that the average user might not know, the way that you've moved the business now is that it will just be, you can go to a company that's currently using Amazon S3, and you can say, well, integrate with our solution. You don't need to switch everything over. Try integrating storing some of your data in here. And we believe we can provide you with a cheaper, faster, and more secure solution. And you might want to then migrate more and more of your data over. Is that kind of the strategy you're following at the moment?
Absolutely. And so I want to get into your storage coin question, but this is exactly what we're doing with something like Heroku. We're in beta now, and we're actually going to be launching on Heroku in the next couple of days. And that exact same thing. You have a 1 million+ developer platform where a lot of these applications need to store data, and the only provider that's on there is a provider that just takes S3 and resells it at a huge markup. And so we're trying to go into platforms like that and say, hey, we can get you better speed, better privacy, better security at half the cost. And our tools weren't built 10 years ago and super antiquated. Here's something that you can use for your application. And so that's really what we want to make the impact on the developer side, because developers are really the ones who make the choices for cloud storage today. When you download your next app, you don't care what provider and server it goes to. You just care that the app works. The developers are the ones who really decide where our data goes to.
And that's kind of why we were really interested in participating in the next round, because on top of all the technology, which is super interesting, you've got a really clear value proposition as the business and the company, which is that you can simply go to all of these companies that are already storing data in Amazon S3, or partner with companies like Heroku, who already have 1 million relationships with 1 million applications and developers.
That's exactly why in 2015 we came to that same conclusion. It's like, wow, this technology is really awesome. It could do a lot of good, but we got to get into people's hands.
Yeah.
That means knocking on doors. I'm flying out to San Francisco next week. To do that exact thing. We just signed a Fortune 500 Cox Enterprise as a customer a couple of weeks ago. We couldn't do that, as an open source project exclusively, but as a company, we can put a lot of resources into making those relationships happen, and making those integrations happen, and supporting them. And that's what we've always been about.
And
if you need to get out there.
Great. And while you might initially be having a lot of those B2B meetings, we can soon see how this can scale into a decent startup where you've got a sales team, and the pitch is really simple. The pitch is, we can do it cheaper because we've got this. We're using other people's networks and computers to store the data. We can do it safer, more securely, because you're not subject to one computer being hacked. And we can do it faster, where there isn't necessarily downtime, because if one computer's down or one server's down, there's a whole network there. So while it may be early on, and all of those promises may not be able to deliver upon simultaneously, it just seems that it's a no-brainer pitch that can really get scale as soon as you've got that technology that can deliver at scale.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's jump into your question about Storj coin and that token. Yes.
So,
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, well, I mean, some context to that. We see a lot of tokens being created for no reason at the moment, other than to raise finance and create a new investment vehicle that they
Yeah,
have
I've
to
been in the space
pretend
since
is not an
2012.
investment vehicle, because if it was an investment vehicle, then it would be subject to regulations that wouldn't allow almost all of the people that are investing in it to actually invest. So, and on the flip side, we're seeing applications which, are creating a token because there seems to be genuine utility. And at the moment, the only coin we've seen with genuine utility, I would argue, is Bitcoin, because there's a genuine market of buyers out there that continually need Bitcoin. And that can offset some of the sell pressure from the miners that are getting these new coins and need to sell them in order to pay their electricity bills. And it's created a genuine market. Now, do you see where do you think Storj coin fits into that, and kind of how has your thinking evolved since you originally decided to do this model of creating a coin?
Yeah, so I've been in the space since 2012, so I've seen the wide gamut. Long live Dogecoin. Um, yeah, so our thought around Storj coin is, you're right, is that Bitcoin is one of the real powerhouses in the ecosystem, and you look at the mining resources behind that, and so we came very early on that we do not want to create our own blockchain. Bitcoin is very strong and very secure. And so we ended up going with a platform called Counterparty, which some people may be familiar with. And all it is it's extra metadata on a Bitcoin transaction that allows you to create this new token, but with the same security and power of the Bitcoin network. And so we created the Storj coin. We love Bitcoin. And by the way, people should know that the protocol for storage is agnostic to any token. It can be Bitcoin, it can be Storj coin, it can be goats, it doesn't care. We see Storj coin, though, being kind of the primary method on the network for many reasons. Number one is that when you're dealing with storage is really, really cheap per unit of use. So if you look at a gigabyte, it's only like 3 cents a month. So if I want to transfer you like a file that's a kilobyte or something very small, there's actually, you run out of decimal places in Bitcoin to actually transfer that. It seems like a Satoshi is a very small unit, the smallest unit of Bitcoin, but it's actually not enough for us to be able to use on our platform and actually transfer data without adding a lot of IOUs and doing some really bad stuff. Number two is more of an economic side, is that you have supply and demand in the storage ecosystem. You have people who are selling their hard drive space, and you have people who are using that space. And if you have a token that has some external factors to that, to its value, then that can end up causing some unintended consequences. So let's say Bitcoin has a rough week and goes down, from 700 to 500. People were getting paid in Bitcoin for renting out their hard drive space, but they just lost, a whole bunch of profit. So I'm not making so much money. Let me turn off my farming rig. And so that creates some perverse incentives and disincentives for people to turn off their machines, which is not actually related to the real supply and demand of that market. So we thought, let's use the technology, but create a new token that is more balanced to the real supply and demand of the network. So as the token grows, we want more space. As it shrinks, we want less space. Versus external factors influencing that and really getting the market out of whack. So there's a couple more reasons, but those are kind of the primary reasons we see a use for Storj Coin. The other one being is implementations of how we're building out the micropayment system and how we can use Storj Coin to make that very cheap and effective and quick versus Bitcoin. We'd actually have to lock up a few $1 million plus worth of Bitcoin just to get that started. That's something that we can do right now with Storj Coin.
Okay, so what I think is interesting is clearly this token was created to have utility and to be really used in the network, and it seems you have reasons for actually doing that, unlike other applications which may not actually have a reason. It was just a way of raising fund, accumulating more Bitcoin, and doing an unregulated offering, as it were, which is what we're seeing a lot of at the moment. It seems there's genuine utility. So, but what becomes quite an interesting conversation next is investors that may have invested in a company versus people that own those tokens and are tracking the price of those tokens. It seems like those are two very different products that do two very different things, because the price of the coin, I guess, and no one knows exactly where these things are going to go. They're very hard to predict and forecast. But the actual token is based upon the supply and demand of the token. So if users are using Storj Coin as a reward for renting out their computer space and providing some of the network, then similar to Bitcoin miners, they might become the sell pressure, where they're looking to sell their coins. And then where does who do you imagine would be buying these coins, and what would be the use for buying these coins?
Well, I like to make the analogy that the relationship between the company and the community, I guess their incentive piece is kind of the tokens, is very symbiotic. So the idea is that Storj Labs, one of the things that we do, besides help develop the technology, is abstract the technology for developers. So that means that a developer is coming in saying, oh, this is Storj. I can use it in my application. Let me swipe my credit card, and buy 10 gigabytes. On the other hand, we're managing all the complicated crypto, peer selection, all this kind of stuff for them. They're just using a traditional API or traditional tools to use this. And so that means we, as Storj Labs, need this capacity for these developers, for these people who are using this platform. And so that's where we, as a business, go into the market, and we're buying Storj Coin because we need it to maintain the contracts on the distributed network that we're utilizing. So you have someone like us who can abstract that for the end user, and a large player like us that is buying these tokens to use to pay for storage space on the network. Now, there's obviously going to be other people who want to use the network more directly, and they'll have a use for them. But again, like you said, the utility of the token is provided there in buying and selling storage space, as opposed to some other tokens that have more of a fun value, like Dogecoin. So the token is really to provide that incentivization and provide that utility to the platform. But again, there's a lot of concepts in there into the economics that they get a little fuzzy. But I'm only trying to say that the network and the company, there's no divergent interests there between people who are investing in the company and people who have the token. They're both working together to the same goals, to build out the ecosystem, to push the vision and idea forward, and those incentives for both of them are aligned to do so.
Yeah. So I mean, the best forecast, and I got to be, very careful of what I say here, but the best, and it's kind of our thinking behind this is that the B2B side being pushed by the company to find more relationships like Heroku and Cox, and also I know we one of our portfolio companies was Kim.com's Mega Upload too, and we asked him to have a conversation with you, and he's been looking at having a conversation how he might be able to build that front end secure Dropbox, and he could utilize Storj as one of the providers for increased security. So, but the company pushing those relationships, and then as more and more people, more and more of these developers and larger enterprise solutions actually using the technology, if it's maybe a large enterprise solution that's not too familiar with the crypto network, then Storj, the company, in order to provide a more useful service to the end customer, may end up coming in and buying a lot of those tokens in order to provide the service. And then maybe someone in the crypto space that's more familiar with, using exchanges and sending money through public keys and all sorts of stuff. They'll provide some volume, because if they want to utilize the network, then that creates some buy demand. And then obviously there's sell demand from the people that are providing actual, storage and need to actually lock in some of that value in Bitcoin and then to a traditional currency or something. So, the best I can really think of is that if the company continues to push those relationships, while the company will be receiving much of the economic value, it has a knock-on effect with creating some kind of buy volume for the coin. So the only real sensible approach, if you believe in this vision and you actually qualify to invest, would be to have some equity in the company to benefit from the upside of potentially, knocking some of Amazon S3's business away. And then the coin for actually maybe some, benefiting from whatever the economics may turn out. And no one really knows how they're going to turn out. But the more the company performs, the more likely maybe the coin will perform.
Right.
So maybe that's what we're drawing. But again, this is high risk stuff. Our investors are used to these types of risks. So, so this is the best, and I think we can draw out. Have you got any further thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, so I want to be clear on our focus. Our focus, since we kind of investigated the Dropbox business and really found like, okay, well, Amazon S3 is really making all the money and actually, doing the good stuff over here. Our focus has really been on developers, B2D, business to developers. You look at businesses like DigitalOcean that have really grown that into a very large business. But there is, yes, some secondary relationships that we're working on in terms of, B2B. That's much longer tail, takes much longer time, to happen and do. But when it does happen, like Cox Enterprises, it's great. So just wanted to be clear on the focus is, more on the developer side, but yes, we are banging on the doors of those larger enterprises where this could actually be a huge help to them in terms of, they want their data private, they want it secure, they don't want to pay an arm and a leg that they're currently, paying now. So I just wanted to be a little bit more clear on who we're focusing.
Okay, and so maybe that leads to what's kind of the mix of the company at the moment? Are you primarily a bunch of developers, or you got some biz dev people in the team? What does the team look like at the moment?
Team is mostly developers. Developers.
Are you a developer yourself?
Yeah, I am. So yeah, I'm trying to think in terms of the company.
A developer that can do a Google Hangout.
It's probably at 12 full-time and that number might be a little low. We've just added some people recently. There's one person that doesn't write code on a regular basis, so that's pushing a 90 plus.
Okay.
People. So that's also representative of operations officer and chief financial officer that also writes code, and so everyone's very, very, very technical on that side. But we are expanding kind of our marketing side. We opened up an office in Salt Lake City because really the developers, if you look at the concentration of them, they're on the West Coast, right? They're in the Valley, they're in Seattle, whatnot. So we've opened up an office down there. So we can go down there in the morning and come back for dinner time. So that's been a real help to us in terms of expanding the businesses and making these relationships happen. So I'm actually going out there next week to the Valley.
Okay.
So
well,
really
I mean, this is why I was excited about some of your announcements with partnerships with, Heroku, because it's once your application is already on Heroku, it's now a question of, as that product develops out, someone just downloading the app within the Heroku network and deciding to allocate some of their storage there, and then seeing if there's any economic benefits, and then they can kind of gradually ease in. So,
so I kind of a teaser of kind of what's to come is that we just finished up the documentation for Heroku. We went through and just did some video tutorials on here's how to get it integrated and give people all the tools they need. That's going live in the next few days. We're kind of building out our sales and marketing office in Salt Lake City to scale up. And version 6 of Storj is actually, we just tagged everything today in the office. So that's going to be coming out in the next couple of days, and that's going to support that Heroku launch and a bunch of other things that I can't talk about yet, but that are coming up in the new years after the holidays. So, we're very excited for kind of the progress we made, but yes, we are scaling up right now, to support our new customers and those new platforms that we have now and are bringing on in the next, coming up time.
Great. Well, I'm very excited for the future of Storj. We've been dealing with your colleague John. And we did an investment alongside other investors in the seed round, and the next steps is it looks like in 2017 you're speaking with some of the larger investors and VCs to look to close a Series A, and in the meantime we've given our investors some of their preemption rights to be able to contribute to a pre-Series A round, which we're doing with a convertible note. And so with our qualifying investors in Bank to the Future, we'll be sharing this video, and they'll get the opportunity to use some of their preemption rights to actually do the pre-Series A. And then in 2017, it seems like your focus is in a lot of the relationships that you built. I know that there's some things you can't announce at the moment, but John has been telling me about some important conversations you've been having, and then you're also looking to close a Series A with a larger venture capital investor that sees the potential in this. How's things going there?
Yeah, they're going great. Like you said, there's a lot of things that we're working on, and well, I think there'll be some nice surprises kind of the beginning of the year. I can't tell you now because I would spoil surprise. But we're really excited for our progress, and if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to the newsletter on storj.io, you probably should. We're going to be pushing out some more frequent updates. We just announced recently, with the version 4 upgrade that we did in October, we kind of reset the stats. And from there, October 11th to the end of last month, we actually hit 1 petabyte, a milestone of 1 petabyte of storage. As of now, that's actually 1.5 petabytes. data storage. So that's 1,500 terabytes of storage. So the storage is growing very rapidly with the changes that we introduced in version 4 and version 5 of storage. And to give you the other side of that, the supply side, we have about 7 petabytes of available capacity on the network as of last time I checked the stats. So we're very excited for the growth, both on the usage and traction of the platform and, on the more enterprise side, like Heroku and Cox that we've been talking about. We've come a very long way since we were last on your platform.
Yeah, well, and I think that's also a function of the way you're actually managing your communications and relationships with the community as well. We regularly see you, putting out new content, new updates. The newsletter, which we're always reposting on the forum, is always, giving, real leaps forward and real updates of what's actually happening. Where do people follow you most? I know you do a lot of Google Hangout content, and I know, are you using Slack as to mainly manage your community?
So we love Slack, but we hit the limit. We had too many community members that we hit there, like at 5,000 users, Slack just cuts you off.
Yeah.
So we actually moved over to Rocket Chat. So everyone was previously on Slack, you just reset your password on Rocket Chat and you're in there. So we've been really loving that, and we fixed it up, so it looks pretty much the same. And so I highly suggest that everyone who really wants to dive in, just go on Storj.io, look at community page, and join the Rocket Chat for that. If you're passive and just want to kind of know what's up, join the newsletter, and we'll send you updates like once a month or so.
Yeah, and a final thought, because it's slightly off topic, but it might be interesting to our investors. We're always trying to improve the level of communication from companies that that we've invested in or have done a funding round with us, and the actual entrepreneurs. And it's a constant challenge because there's sensitive information that you can't announce when you're doing the B2B stuff. Right. But then there's also the fact that the team very often have really got their head down. They see the progress that they're making, but often they may forget to actually tell everyone the progress they're making. But I think you seem to have got that balance really well, where you're constantly providing updates, and yet you seem to be making progress. What's your trick? What's your secret? How do you manage this, as a time-starved entrepreneur that's trying to grow and scale?
I think one important component of that is Rocket Chat, which was formerly Slack, that's very finely ingrained into our culture. I don't think we'd even be alive right now if it wasn't for tools like Slack or Rocket Chat that allowed people from many different places to communicate and collaborate. I mean, we started as a completely distributed team. Actually, of the 4 founders in the company, we didn't all get together till in one place until like mid of this year. We were all distributed and we meet each other, but not all in one group. That's when we had our open beta launch party in the middle of this year. Got to talk to Edward Stone. That was really fun. So yeah, I think the fact that Rocket Chat and those chat problems are already integrated in our workflow, you can just see how we work and see what we're working on. So there's no curtain in our organization, right? It's very transparent. You see what we're working on a daily basis. You can talk to us, head on. So that gap in terms of what's going on is very easy. And then again, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, we'll try to distill that and shoot out in a mail shot. But at the end of the day, the information's already out there because you can see, from the idea to completion, what happened, and it was all out there from the beginning. So I think it's just being transparent from day one and integrating the community into what you're working on. But sometimes that's hard, for some companies who have to keep this information on the download till it's actually done, versus some of our stuff again, we started out very, very transparent, and it's easy for us to do. This is part of our culture. So.
Yeah, and since you seem to be doing such a good job from that, which I think a lot of other companies can learn from, including us, because it's a constant challenge. How do you actually deal with, there's a side effect to being so open and transparent in that you have, what's called trolls, which are people that don't necessarily have the best interests of the company in mind, that, are deliberately sucking up a lot of the team's time in order to cause as much destruction to the company as possible. How do you handle things like that?
Yeah, so it's funny. If you look back in Storj's history, you look at 2014, when we did our crowd sales, we had one particular individual on Reddit who said, Storj is a scam, they're it looks really fishy. What actually had happened is we had launched our crowd sale and gone to a conference to announce it, and so we weren't, available to answer many questions. And so these questions started brewing and kind of got out of hand. So we ended up catching back up, engaging with these this troll and these other people. Turns out the person who actually wrote that post works for us now. He's been working for us for about a year. It's just in my nature to engage with some of these people and try to. Sometimes there's actually some useful information. Engage them in a certain manner. Other times, again, you're right. It's a complete waste of time. They just want to make a mess, and that's where our community really helps out. Right? Is they can really help abstract, some of those people who aren't going to provide any value, even if you scratch under the surface. So it really comes down to our community is really helpful in abstracting some of that stuff for us. And, the community and the community leaders take care of all tier 1 support questions, right? So you have a question with StorjCare, they deal with it, and that allows us to focus on development. So it's really the community solving that problem, for themselves. And
that's incredible. And does that come at a cost? Do you have to issue bounties to get this help, or is this purely people that love what you're doing so much that they're actually, taking care of some of the customer service challenges?
Yeah, so most of the users that help us out, do that on their own free time and their own volition. But there are some of those where they've been doing it for months, and we say, hey, let's bring you in as a more official capacity. We have one community member that's is helping us test for a very long time. He finds a million bugs, and he actually builds all the releases. So we're saying okay, we can give you a little something for your time. But it's really just down to the ethic and the help of the community who really believe in the vision and really believe storage should be made private and secure and performant and all these other things. And they really put in a lot of time and effort to do that. The tokens and any other things, and if anyone submits a pull request, we send them stickers and T-shirts and all this swag to give a little incentivization, and that's just icing on the cake. But it really comes down to our community is absolutely awesome. They help us out every day, and we would not be here. I would not be here speaking today if it wasn't for them making this happen. So we really love them and really appreciate them.
Yeah. So from the side of having a great product, I think people can gain a lot from actually learning how you're managing these things and managing the business. So well done for doing a great job there. Good luck on getting the pre-Series A in, and the Series A, you deserve it, I believe. And look forward to seeing some of those larger relationships and more applications being built. Thanks for your time, Shawn.
Absolutely. Anytime.